of the running back position, and it's an area that the Texans find themselves in the middle of. Running backs. How much do you want to pay running backs? How much do you want to bring in running backs? Should you try to shop for running backs that are cheaper than others? It's an interesting discussion. We know that the market was already going to be stacked. Now we're hearing names like potentially Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara entering the market. As we approach the final week before the Texans are going to have to make these decisions, what is your just overall outlook on the state of the running back position when it comes to looking at it through the localized lenses that we look through when it comes to the Texans? Because I would think step one is they got to sign a free agent. It's not, you're not going to go into the draft trying to get your running back. So that's going to be step one. They're going to be in this polarizing market that we've talked about a long time. Where do we go from there?
I feel like running back for the Texans is the position that they have the most plans that they can execute over the course of the offseason. Like they probably have plan A through like Z almost with running backs, because if it's Saquon, then what do we do with the other positions? If it's Josh Jacobs, do we do this? If it's Derrick Henry, do we do this? If Devin Singletary is cheaper than we expect him to be, can we do this with the other position? Because, look, Dameon Pierce is the only running back that's actually on the roster. They got some practice squad guys that are signed. I don't trust Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce is not a true third running back if you go and sign two guys. So you may need to be looking at three guys that you need to bring in. And maybe that third guy is sort of that special teams do-it-all guy like Daria Gumbawale was a bunch last year. But there are so many needs at the running back spot. You need a starter, you need a backup, and you probably need a third running back as well. And there are so many names. And as you mentioned at the top there, you could have big-time names like Alvin Kamara and Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones all be hitting the market in addition to the Barkleys, the Jacobs, the Henrys, the Swifts, all those different names. It really comes down to they've got to go through and say, hey, if we get this guy, what does it look like? How good can we be? And that part of that is just really looking at Bobby Slowick and the rest of the offensive staff and saying, how are you going to use this guy and how bad do you need him?
Here's my thing about the running back position, and this is what's frustrating for me. And you know I'm pro running back. I don't think their impact has died. I think people have gotten smarter on them. And I'll tell you this, I think in a few years we might be talking about wide receivers the same way we're talking about running backs. Because you're seeing all these teams like not want to give wide receivers second deals or big deals. You're seeing guys getting traded like Jefferson. They're mentioning Jefferson now. You saw Tyreek Hill traded. You saw Stephon Diggs traded. So I actually think that the running back position is just the first step in teams understanding that, you know, giving second contracts can handcuff you. But for some reason, the running back position, like anytime there's like something that happens, it's a reflection of the position instead of a reflection of the league. Like, could you imagine, like, let's pretend that Cooper Kupp was a running back and they drafted Puka this year and he did what he did. All you would be hearing is, well, this is why you don't pay running backs. And look, you can find running backs here. Like, it happens everywhere. But I think the running back is just it's the first step in teams understanding that second contracts are really what you kind of want to avoid. And because of where the running backs are right now, like, they're bargains, but people are talking about them as if this is still the early 2000s or this is 1996 where Barry Sanders becomes the highest paid player. That's not the case. Like, I'm hearing, like, a lot of the dialogue that I'm hearing on my show and on this stream is, well, I would rather go pay a linebacker or an edge guy or a defensive tackle instead of a running back. Brother, they if you look at what the projected market is for these guys at the top of the market, they make somewhere between what Sheldon Rankins signed a one-year deal for last year and what Dalton Schultz got when the tight end market spoke to him. You're not talking about giving these guys $20 million, and they're bargains and they make impacts all over the place. So I just think we're in a situation right now where I understand the business side of it, but I think the way in which the impact that these good running backs can have on good teams. Oh, by the way, especially when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, because Saquon Barkley's they're letting him go because they decided to pay Daniel Jones. If the Browns get rid of Nick Chubb, it's not because they don't think Nick Chubb's good. It's because they gave that contract to Deshaun Watson. So that's what's happening with with these positions. And I think it's just a big opportunity. And I respect all sides of it, but I think we're talking about running backs as if they're in the same like tax bracket as what you're going to give Christian Wilkins or what you're going to give Patrick Queen or what you're going to give Mike Evans. It's not the case. Look at them. Like, would you rather have an impact running back, or would you rather have what Dalton Schultz gave you last year or what Sheldon Rankins gave you last year? And I think that's where the discussion should be, because that's where the price mark is on these guys.
Well, the money conversation is it sort of leads into the amount of people that are available to play running. There's more good running backs and there's more people capable of playing running back than there have ever been in the history of the National Football League. Like, it used to be you had to be a unique, once in a generation type of guy to be the best running back in football. And like, yes, Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in football, but there are a ton of dudes that are really good and consistently productive. And I thought it was really interesting to see what Brian Callahan, the new Titans head coach, said last week at the scouting combine when somebody asked him about the devaluing of the running back position. He's like, we don't value it any less. We've just decided to spread those reps out amongst a couple of different players to maximize what we want to bring to the table. And when I think about it like that, it's like, oh, okay, like if Saquon Barkley's on your team and he's getting 90% of the reps and he's only as effective as he can be because he's getting 90% of the reps, or he's on your team and he's getting 70, and then somebody else productive is getting those other 20, 30 reps, percent of the reps, like you could really do something with the running back spot. And man, good rushing attacks is how you take care of business in the playoffs. Like, I understand you can get to the playoffs a lot of different ways, but running the football and taking care of business on defense is how you win in the playoffs more often than not. And it really gives you that opportunity as a team to have your quarterback in a position to go win you the game. Obviously, Mahomes marches them down in the Super Bowl. That's how they win the game. But they're there because they have been able to take care of the football. They run the football well a couple of different times leading up to that game. Like, you got to be able to run the football. And the Texans disappointed overall to me in the rushing attack last year. I know Devin Singletary came on nice, but overall it was a disappointing rushing attack. It's got to be better.
Good. Like, let's just be honest. I heard Seth Payne say this the other day, and I thought it was kind of a light, like a light sounded off. Like, the offense wasn't good. No. It was okay. It wasn't that good. It wasn't consistent. They weren't balanced. The offense wasn't as good. And there were times where they had chances to ice games, and because they couldn't run the ball or because they gave it back to the other squad, they ended up losing. And you have guys on defense that have very high ceilings. Derek Stingley, Christian Harris, Will Anderson, like, those guys are going to get better. Your defense is going to get better. They're going to get coached up. The offense, it's not good enough. The wide receiver room is very, very thin. You have two guys who you wonder about whether they can stay healthy or not. 3 through 5 among the worst in the league at the wide receiver position. Like, the offense last year, it wasn't good enough. And you bring in some running backs that can do a bunch of other things. I think that's a good way to counter it. And oh, by the way, I think it's a cheap way to counter it. Like, I'm almost getting to the point where I would almost draft a receiver in the first round. We saw what happened in the combine yesterday. I want to focus on, I want to get this offense off and running, have D'Amico coach up the guys, have guys take the next step and fill in some of the holes accordingly. But it all starts with the running back position. If you can run the ball at the end of games and take off a little bit more clock, then you don't put your defense in some of the situations that they were in last year where they had to get stops at the end of games. So I just think it's a position that's disrespected. I think it's a position where it's right in front of you that I don't know why it's being compared to some of these other top positions. Whether it's Saquon, whether it's Jacobs, whoever the hell they like in the system, I think they need to be shopping at the top of the running back thing. And they still need to find backs, maybe even bring back Singletary.
Well, people are so worried about the money aspect of this and how much guys cost and things like that. The Texans are near the top in cap space, and the NFL handed you basically a running back gift card. That's what that extra $10 million was on the salary cap. They handed you a gift card to basically spend on a running back. That's how I looked at that $10 million. If
you're worried about the bread, worry about the bread at other positions. This is, again, we're talking about between Dalton Schultz and Sheldon Rankins money. That's what we're talking about.
I think too, as this is a really important aspect of 2024 as well. Like, Nick Cassera talked about this at the podium, like their job is to make sure 2024 is really good. And yes, they have to pay attention to 25 and so many on, but the focus is on 2024. The whole, I don't know what Windows conversation means. Like, I kind of like that. Like they have to be much better in 2024 than they were in 2023. And part of that is they've got to be more complete and consistent on offense. And they can do that by running the football. And there's just, I too wonder if there's a whole nother level of this offense that they can unlock if they just run the football better. And there's not a way to add talent to that room via the draft. If there was a Bijan, I'd be screaming draft a Bijan. If there was a Jahmyr Gibbs, I'd be screaming draft a Jahmyr Gibbs. But there's not even a guy that's really a guaranteed second rounder. And so go find guys in free agency and spend the money.
That's the other thing that's hilarious about this is we were having this conversation last year, and last year it was, hey, if Bijan Robinson's at 12, don't take him. You have Dameon Pierce. You found Dameon Pierce in the 4th round, or Jahmyr Gibbs. No, it's amazing how much the goalpost just moves with disrespect to the running back. I'm hoping they bring one in. Maybe it's someone that they like. Maybe they see something that I don't. I have a healthy / unhealthy trust in this organization that they're going to do the right thing. So there is that, but I hope to God that they try to improve the situation and they take advantage of a position that I think that teams are getting smarter about when it comes to running back. But I think that adds an opportunity for the Texans to get a position, a player that still makes as much of an impact as they ever have for a lot cheaper than that type of impact would usually cost in a perfect world.
Man, when you're talking about the financial commitment of it too, I mean, Alvin Kamara is making a bunch of money now, but if he hit free agency, he'd be making a whole lot less. If Aaron Jones got released, he'd be making a whole lot less, and you could still go spend some money. You know, imagine a running back room of, say, I don't know, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and somebody else. Like,
that's a lot.
I mean,
now you're playing Madden.
I'm really not. And that's familiarity with zone schemes. That's familiarity with the offenses. And that's not a huge financial commitment to get those guys. You know, so like they have to go and get Dameon Pierce is probably not going to be on this team. We need to have that conversation too. Like he can't be the 3rd running back. Like he doesn't bring anything to the table. So it's like,
it's going to be interesting to see how they handle him. I like his mindset. I like his makeup. So we'll see how that goes, but they definitely need to improve the position.
Go get Aaron Jones if he's a free agent. I want him and Singletary.
Shout out to Aaron Jones. Shout out to UTEP, man. Shout out to UTEP.
Yeah, UTEP's not really putting a ton of guys in these days, but that's one of the best.
Shout out to UTEP, man.
Shout out to UTEP. Shout out to FAU for Devin Singletary.
There we go. Thank you. Running back position. It's a polarizing one. It's an interesting one. Some people don't value it as much as others. I want to get the best one possible. What say you? Subscribe, like, right along. Locker Room, In the Loop, Sports Radio 610. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 10. We got a hell of a lot to talk about from the combine, etc. Also, we'll focus on one of these running backs tomorrow as well. We're going to talk about DeAndre Swift, a guy who, not going to lie, Cody, initially I was like, kind of dismissive. The more you look into it, though, DeAndre Swift, he might make sense. Appreciate you for coming through. Off season's upon us. Combine concluding as we speak. And then before we know it, it'll be time to react to signings instead of saying sign or decline. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. We're all in this together. Appreciate you.